Our second speaker is Dave Young, and I think probably to most of the people in the room, they know Dave. He has a very distinguished career here at NASA, not at NASA headquarters, and also NASA Langley. Currently, why we have Dave here today is he is now a senior advisor to the center at NASA Langley, and he is developing and looking into implementing a new NASA strategic plan that is aligned with NASA's strategic plan, along with NASA 2040 initiative. A lot of you might have worked with Dave Young when he was deputy director for NASA Langley, and also he was the director of the Langley Science Directorate between 2013 and 2019. With that, Dave has also been on several details to NASA headquarters. And with that, we want to, that's a small introduction, but we want to get you up here, Dave. One fun fact. What's a fun fact of Dave Young? Dave Young's fun fact is, and it's actually very, I thought that was cute, in his bio, okay, to do that is, I'll read it word for word. Despite ample evidence to the contrary, he remains optimistic about Philadelphia sports teams. So okay, there you go. They did well. You had the Eagles last year. I mean, and maybe this year. I'm not so sure.
Excuse me. They were good for a few months.
Yeah, good for a few months. So with that, Dave, thank you for coming. And let's hear about the NASA initiative.
Time? You want me to wrap up?
We have,
Make it shorter as long as you want.
how long? About 15 minutes, do you think? Do we have much more?
15?
Yeah, about 15. Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
There's a clicker up there if you need it. The clicker, where's the clicker? This? Okay. I can do it from here too, right? All right. No, hey, thanks, Kathy. I really appreciate it. Yeah. I remain a Philadelphia sports, but actually this is more of a natural state, watching them lose. I never know how to handle it when they're actually successful. So, but anyway, hey, I love the last speaker. And I think that was really important to kind of look back at all, at the history and, all the great things we've done. We're justifiably proud being part of NASA Langley all these years. But what I'm talking to you about now is, how do we make sure that the people working here today, when they join the Alumni Association, they look back with that same sense of pride that you all did. And so that's my job now, is that, as Kathy said, as Deputy Center Director, I approached Clayton earlier this in 23 and just suggested we needed someone full-time thinking about strategy, because there's a lot of changes going on in the space community going forward. NASA has not been doing a good job of adapting to the new reality of where we are with commercial space. And so, and then we were really trying to figure out, where does a center like Langley, a research center, fit into that going forward? So we felt they needed to have a dedicated team looking at that, and I offered to step down as deputy center director so I could take on that role. And it's been very rewarding. So we're calling the effort Langley is the Future, and that's twofold. One is we want to, we truly believe that for NASA to be successful, we need research centers. We can't just build everything today. We've got to be thinking about that next step. And of course, that's what Langley has always been. We're always looking at not necessarily solving the problems we have this year, but really, how are we setting the path for the space community, for NASA going forward 10, 15 years out. So what is life? So you can read all these charts, but it's another strategic planning effort. And you all been around a long time. I've been around a long time. We've had many strategic planning efforts going on in the past. So why is this one going to be different, as we really look to see what is our place in the world? What should be our vision for a research center in the year 2040? I think one reason why we have some optimism for success, but sometimes these things, take on a life of their own or don't go anywhere, is that NASA is asking these exact same questions. So as we see some of the problems that have accumulated here at Langley, where we've seen a lot of the work that was traditionally the province of NASA only move out to the commercial sector, where we see even like in the science area, things that were normally done by NASA centers are now being pushed more and more to industry and academia. How do we adapt to that? How do we take advantage of the capabilities that are outside the agency, but then how do we, continue to play a key role in driving that community going forward? So you can see what we're doing here. And this is a way too of combining not just that strategic planning from a portfolio sense, but also some of the changes that we've seen from the pandemic, where we've gone to a more remote environment. How are we going to adapt on that front? How are we going to adapt with artificial intelligence and other digital technologies that are coming in? So we're trying to combine all those into an integrated center strategy, so we have that vision going forward, and then putting together a real implementation plan so it doesn't just sit on a shelf, which is what we've seen happen in the past. But as I said, we're tying into NASA 2040. And if you're not familiar with that, the agency is asking these same questions. And I find it gratifying, because we're sitting in a room with senior leaders across the agency, and they are asking the right questions. Doesn't mean we're going to actually do anything about it. I mean, I think we have to have the will to have those questions, but they're asking questions about, truly, do we really budget properly? Do we really have the right relationships between the mission directors and the centers? Are we actually partners, or right now we just feel like they buy us by the yard, and they think about us as more of a mouth to feed as opposed to strategic partners? Can we really come together and decide what should the mission of NASA be, and how we should be structured to do that? So we're having conversations about talking about going back to the future. We're having conversations about, if you remember, Code Y centers, Code R centers. Should maybe the mission director own the centers again? That way maybe we're not. Once again, we're seen as strategic partners. Going forward, as we define that new role. So what they've done at the agency level is they've made 6 work streams. One's looking at the mission. One's looking at that structure. I mean, how do we have, not infrastructure, but looking at the structure of how we really accomplish our mission. We're looking at the budget, actually talking again about unified labor accounts. Wouldn't that just be great? So our branch heads don't spend 85% of their time tracking a tenth of an FTE, right? We're looking at processes, we're looking at infrastructure, and we're looking at people. And they're doing it right, because they're looking at mission and structure first, with some parts of budget thrown in there, to make sure we can structure things properly. But then, to me, infrastructure and people have to follow what you decide you're going to do about what truly is the core mission. What should the centers be doing? So, matter of fact, right now, Clayton and all the other senior leaders are at Johnson, going through really the first. We've been at this now for about 4 months, and they're having their second major summit. Really trying to put that blueprint out there. So at Langley, we want to make sure we're not left, on the side of the road and people are making decisions without us being involved. So we have got a member on each of the key work streams. So we got somebody on the mission team, structure team, budget team, infrastructure team, people team. And I got the great opportunity to lead a team. They realized that people kept bringing up IRAD. Remember IRAD? Remember Center Discretionary Funding? Remember that we used to have something like that? Pam Elroy, deputy administrator, actually contacted me and said, we need someone to figure out what we should be doing on IRAD, how we should manage that, how going forward. So once again, key problems that we've all seen that we get cynical about, we are having the conversations around, can we really put together what NASA should be going forward? So there's some reason for optimism. And if you just look on the bottom here, the last line, their goal is that we should be the preeminent institution for research, technology, and engineering to lead science, aeronautics, and space exploration for humanity. Sounds lofty, but it also sounds like what we want. When we came into NASA, we wanted to be that. And we feel we've been kind of not doing that anymore, because we've been giving too much out the door and maybe not investing enough in our own people and in research. So there's reason for optimism. I don't think I need to go through this. I mean, a lot of you are probably just to remind you, if you've been away for a while, I mean, Langley's still about 3,500 people, about evenly split between civil servants and on-site contractors. Our last budget was pretty close to $1 billion. So I actually went over $1 billion 1 year, which is a goal that Lisa Rowe had many years ago. And of course, we still have a lot of infrastructure, and we still have those problems that we have in terms of the funding the infrastructure. So once again, if NASA 2040 can figure out that, Congress just gives us this money and the center operating budgets, the SSMS or whatever they call it this year, right? And it's never enough, and they keep cutting it, right? I mean, one of the key structural things we're trying to take care of is that if I have a mission like Artemis, what do I need to do it? And I need to pay for it. So that infrastructure should be coming out of the Artemis budget. Those, the training for the people within, working Artemis should be coming out of the Artemis budget. This will change this mission content, but I think it would also position us for actually giving a realistic, assessment to Congress what it truly takes to do these jobs that we always seem to never have enough money to do. I don't want to dwell on this too much, but if you've been wondering where our budget's coming from now, on the left, what you have is the FY23, I think, agency budget, and it shows you things like Aero is 4% of the budget, science is 31%, et cetera. Then if you then translate that into what we're doing at Langley, I mean, of the 4% of the agency budget that's Aero, that counts for 27% of our budget, and we're getting about a third of the Aero budget too. So fantastic. We still get tremendous support from the Aero Mission Directorate, but there's not a lot of room for growth because it's not a big budget, right? But you can also look at exploration, where we're getting less than 1%, even though we've made incredible contributions to Artemis, such as the launch abort system, helping them out with the heat shield issues they've been having, after Artemis 1. And then you can go down the list, but you can kind of see now that right, our portfolio, it's about a quarter from Aero, about a quarter from science, and a lot is coming from the mission support side. It's about a third of it too. But that's what we're starting with. So as we're putting this strategic plan together, the idea is to look to see what our current state is, and you saw it from a funding standpoint, but also we also look from a capability standpoint. So we've talked for some time about product lines, and I'm sorry for the small print here, but the 6 main product lines that we are known for, capabilities that the agency recognizes us as having for intelligent flight systems, aerosciences, systems analysis and concepts, entry, descent, landing, advanced materials and structures, and atmospheric characterization. That pretty much makes up 95% of what we do here at the center, somewhere in those categories. So what are we doing on life? So we're taking a hard look at each of those product lines. We had workshop with subject matter experts on each of those to get an objective look of the health of those capabilities from a infrastructure, from a personnel standpoint, and also looking at the current demand signal coming from headquarters, because in some of those, that demand signal is going down. Just because some of the decisions they're making about going to industry and not, really looking towards their centers for things that we've traditionally done for them. And then we've also asked those groups to then take a look out towards 2040, look out 15 or so years, and tell us where are we heading? And then let's look at some scenarios. So some positive growth scenarios and some negative ones, and really take a hard look about how we should be, potentially making strategic changes now so we can be ready for what's going to be happening in 2040. And then that middle section there, we're talking about, hey, there's the traditional applications, the things we've always used those capabilities for. There's adjacent capabilities. And then some of the, we're also taking a hard look, are there non-traditional applications for some of those capabilities? Some of this is, can we do more work, say, for DoD? I mean, Space Force spun up a few years ago, and they're struggling with some of the things they need to do, and it falls right in line with what we want to do. Do we want to go and really kind of push that, knowing there's always going to be limits on how much we can do in terms of reimbursable work, right? So we've had 6 workshops on this. We've had 2 workshops where we brought in about 130 employees from across the center, really looking to say, hey, paint the picture of what you want us to be and going out there in 2040, not just specifically about these product lines and our capabilities, but really, what should a research center be 15 years from now? And of course, many of you have probably been in many studies where we've talked about the future of research centers. So we've taken a lot of the material that we had from the past to kind of put that together. And now what the Life team is doing is putting a plan together to bridge from where that current state we got from the product lines to that future state that we painted out there now. And we're in the middle of doing that as we speak. And don't try to read this, but the main, just look at the bubbles in the middle. I mean, obviously, like anytime you're looking at business strategy, anytime you're looking at, strategic analysis for a center, you're going to have different lenses in which to look at them. So there's always a financial lens. Do you actually have a business case to close? We can say we want to expand our work in science, but is there truly a business case that's going to close? When we look at the competition across the board of who else we have to compete for that money. There's the market lens. Is there growth in that market? Is there shrinkage of that market? If something's going to happen with commercial space, if there's a disaster, is that all going to collapse and maybe come back to NASA, some of the things that are going out to commercial? So you got to look at how the market's going to change. Look at the competition. I touched on that earlier. And then we're also taking a look at our operating model here in the center, looking at different business models. So since I've been on 3 different reorg teams throughout my career. I've got plenty of raw material about how we've been organized at different stages of the history of Langley. And we're looking, can we use some of that knowledge about, can we, as we look to see what our mission is, are we really structured the right way to make that thing happen? So that's what that's about. And so progress, I've already talked about some of the things that we've been doing. I mean, the workshops are one step. And to me, they're really important because, I could have done this with Clayton, gone off in a room. We could have come up with, just what our ideas are and then pronounce it from on high. But we really wanted to make this as inclusive as possible. So we've had multiple meetings with various organizations around the center. I've met with the ERGs, the employee resource groups. I've met with the transformation teams. We've had these different workshops where we're trying to get grassroots information, input coming in from across the center, because this place, as you know, is full of really smart people, and I don't claim to have any, monopoly on that. We really were trying to get the ideas, which leads me to the point of why I'm here today. You are also a great resource that could potentially help us out here. I mean, as right now we've been in the data collecting phase. We're wrapping that up next week as we get the outbriefs from all the workshops and we begin the integration phase. But truly, once again, I would love if anybody here wants to have conversations where we start fleshing this stuff out. Get your impressions about, hey, yeah, we tried that back in '75 and that really didn't work, or that we tried that, because I've got lots of that. I don't have all of it. So if, once again, I'm here to say that we're in the midst of this. We can get cynical about doing strategic planning because we've seen this end up on a shelf before, but right now we have an opportunity because at the highest levels of the agency, they're asking the right questions and they're really looking to transform NASA. We want to make sure Langley is a part of what they're planning on doing. So with that, I will wrap it up, and I'll just say that you can reach out to me, or you can reach out. Kathy knows how to find me. So if you want, and I've got time, and I'm happy to sit down with anybody to pick their brains, because as we've done this, as I said, we talked about what we've done recently with the workshops, but when we started this thing, we talked to 2-3 dozen ex-NASA employees, industry leaders and things to get their ideas, and then, there's people here that could be just as valuable as the folks we've talked to already. So with that, I'll say thank you for inviting me, and I'll be happy to answer questions. And by the way, when I stepped down, I did that for a reason, because I wanted Clayton to be able to replace me. And so he's going to be advertising. So if anybody's interested in coming back, he's going to be advertising for a new deputy here in the next month. But then, I also told him I'll give you till about June, and then I'm going to join you all. All right, Rich. Yeah, we're actually this morning we were working on trying to put that slide together. That's a great one, and the reason we hadn't done that because we hadn't seen the timeline on 2040. I think they're going to solidify that this week as they're at this summit. But they were really looking to make a few decisions now, particularly around budget. So like with IRAD, and I made a recommendation of increasing IRAD by a factor of 10 at the agency, and nobody blanched, so I'm hopeful. But they want to get that into the budget, cycle, which starts in January, the SPGs, right? So I think they'll be doing some of that now. They're really looking to make decisions along the way, particularly on mission and structure first, and then really have a good path towards the future come this time next year. So on the life side, we did the data gathering phase. We had hoped to be done by the end of the last year and didn't quite make it. But then we're going to pull together the integrated look across the product lines and paint that big picture. We're going to bring in an outside consultant to do some market analysis for us to kind of make sure to grade our homework, so we're not kidding ourselves, with the intent that we can pull together the initial strategic plan and the initial implementation plan by the time I leave in June. Yeah. And hopefully it won't drag me here longer. Yeah, Dan. Yeah.
Changes to NASA's mission at large.
NASA's mission at large? So yeah, well, within the life scope, no, but within the NASA 2040, yes. So we have a member on the NASA 2040 mission team, Charles Cockrell, and which is great because they're really, when you're thinking about the change in NASA's mission, I mean, some people draw the analogy to, hey, we don't build airplanes anymore, we don't fly airplanes anymore, but we're still key to aeronautics, right? Well, seems like on the space side, the commercial's picking up maybe the building and the operations, but who's doing that next level of technology? So think there's some thought that the mission is still going to be centered around space and science and aero, but maybe we go back to the future once again of being more of a research organization that's feeding industry, 5, 10, 15 years out, and not doing the thing now. But do you have other thoughts or?
Well, and this idea in the 80s when we were asked to do some planning for Mars missions, okay?
Mhm.
And I thought at that time that we should reduce the emphasis on human space exploration and focus on robotics
Right.
and automation. This would have had a big impact on the industry with, as artificial intelligence is just
Yeah.
growing.
Uh-huh.
And my thinking is it's not too late to make that switch.
Yeah.
Okay, because human space exploration is like a black hole that just money pours into.
Right.
So I'd suggest
Uh-huh.
if you want to like get on your horse and ride into the thick of things, that you try a suggestion like that to really change how we do things here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that conversation goes on. Yeah, as you can imagine, there's very strong political headwinds that would stop us from doing that. There are certain centers that are devoted to human exploration. And of course, quite frankly, when our leadership goes on the Hill, they talk about the first 9 things they talk about are Artemis, and then they'll get to something else, right? Because that is a place where you get congressional support. So, but then again, we're looking at the fiscal reality. I mean, Artemis, the part where you actually land people on the moon, we can't even give them a date because we're so underfunded on that, right? Meanwhile, I don't know if you've been following the news on Mars sample return, the next robotic mission to Mars, but it's kind of right now, it went from a $3 billion project to a $5 billion project to an $8 billion project. And now the latest assessment is it's not going to come in for under 10 or 11. And so it's actually on the chopping block. Now, JPL's got better lobbyists than we do because they have lobbyists and we don't. So we'll see what happens there. But even the robotic side is a challenge. So you're right. If we can do more things with AI, if we can do more things, without this, without some of the overhead that comes with it that drives the cost up, then yeah.
Yeah, it used to be like, maybe it was even written that people are interested in the space exploration because of the human aspect.
Yep.
And I don't think that's necessarily be the case when you can consider if you have a walking, talking robot that would capture the imagination of a lot of younger folks. And if you lose a robot, oh, it's too bad.
Yeah.
You lose a human, it sets you back a year or two.
At least, yeah. No, I'm not going to argue with you. I would just say that there would be political challenges with actually making that happen. But once again, at least in the rooms I've been in, they're having these kind of conversations. They're actually asking questions. We're going, oh my gosh, wow, we've been asking that for 15 years. It's about time, So yeah. Okay.
Suggest that. Change the future. Don't try to adapt to somebody else's.
I'm with you.
Potentially ill-conceived.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Hey, a quick question. This has got to do with overlapping capabilities and also desirements going forward between different centers as we bring it all together into a NASA plan with a significant role for Langley going forward. So is it being continuously worked when you mentioned, Clayton is already working, he's working with the other center directors along the way so that the smooth process all the way along?
Yeah, that would be great, wouldn't it? No, they are. I mean, they are having that conversation, and everybody realizes, particularly if you look at the science side, of course, that's my background. I mean, the competition model, yes, it forces you to stay current. That's good. In theory, it's giving you the best science. That's good, but it also breeds, distrust and clashes between the centers. So I've seen a lot more collaboration across the centers. I mean, Clayton and the other 3 research center directors, regularly meet to try to be one voice coming from 4 directions as opposed to each of them crying in the wilderness. So that's been good. We've been having conversations with Goddard because they've been struggling with the lack of work that's coming to them too. So overall, I'd say there's been improved cooperation, but when resources gets tight, that's when people go into parochial mode, right? So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, one of my hopes is that, as you include R&D into the overall portfolio with IRADs and things of that nature, hopefully we can grow the size of the pie, so that we have a significant role going forward.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you move more to an R&D, a big R, little D, maybe, as an agency, well, then you have some of our friends down south maybe thinking, well, they need a big chunk of their research budget, which we know is too small for the research centers that we have now. But once again, that's at least under consideration. So I'm glad, I'm encouraged by the conversations. I'll wait and see if we have the will to do the things that need to be done. So, yeah.
Thank you, Dave.
Oh, you're welcome. And thanks. So when I retire, I already have my mug. I'll be ready to come and join you. It'd be fantastic.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
all right.
thank you.
And thank y'all. And yeah, if you want to chat, reach out. Plenty of free time now. I'm not doing that.
So that's here. Yep. All right.